Hi, everyone. My name is Richard Troncalli. I am the social media coordinator of Florida Polytechnic University and your host of our latest STEM Talks, the Internet of Things, a future of constant connection. Thank you all for joining us today. We have John Walicki, who is our Watson Internet of Things Developer Ecosystem Advocate at IBM. We have Kartik Goyani, who is the Vice President of Operations at Metro Development Group, and Frank Callas, who is our junior studying mechanical engineering and also a group member in the Smart Toaster at Florida Poly. So we're really excited to have you all here today. Feel free throughout the Hangout to ask any questions that you have for our panelists, and they'll be happy to answer some of those questions for you. So you may be asking, what is Internet of Things? And I'll best describe it by saying it's a network of physical objects, such as devices, vehicles, buildings, all sharing electronics and software and sensors that will communicate data and information to people. And so to start it off today, we're going to have John introduce himself to you.
Great. Thank you, Richard. So just a little bit of background about myself. So I'm a Watson Internet of Things Developer Advocate. I travel around the United States. I run workshops and conferences and hackathons, and I inspire developers to build with Watson. I want to share all of the cognitive capabilities that the Watson platform has and teach them how to build for the future. Because developers in the past, you programmed to first a mainframe and then a client server environment and then to your PC. And now maybe in the last couple of years, you've programmed to a smartphone. In the future, developers are going to be programming to the cloud. And so if you're a student today learning about computer science, you're going to be a cloud developer for your entire career. And so we, especially as part of the Watson Internet of Things team, want you to build with our platform and Bluemix and Watson Cognitive APIs to really create cool, interesting stuff. So I want to inspire developers to build interesting things on top of our platform. Back to you, Richard.
That's awesome. Thank you. And welcome again, John. And Kartik?
Hi, I'm Kartik Goyani, and I'm kind of super excited to be here because on one side of my screen I see John, who's like the IBM Watson guru, and then on the other side is Frank. And I wish I were as smart as Frank when I was in college to be able to do amazing things, or as John is right now. So the best way to describe me is I have no special skills. I'm just very curious about IoT, and we're trying to deploy that here in the first smart gigabit city that's being built in the Tampa Bay area, built from the ground up, where the digital and the physical worlds come together. And I think that's going to see a massive, tremendous amount of IoT deployment, unlike any other place in the United States, at least more on how it impacts us in the communities that we live in. And we hope to leave a special mark behind on that. So thanks a lot for having me.
Awesome, and thank you for joining us. I know I am really excited for the smart city to come around, especially in Pasco County. It's only about 30 minutes north of us, and it'd be pretty super cool to just be able to live in a smart city, have everything connected through there. And then lastly, we have Frank, who's joining us from Florida Poly. He's actually a student here. So Frank, if you want to share a couple of things?
Sure. Once again, my name is Frank Callas. I'm a student here, a junior currently, and I, as Richard mentioned, was a part of the team that built the Smart Toaster, and I also organized the hackathon here, and I'd also like to go to a lot of hackathons.
Well, that's awesome. Thank you, Frank, for joining us. And it was pretty awesome, your Smart Toaster. I mean, who doesn't want to have the perfect piece of toast? So the first thing we're going to do, we're going to start this off. So John, can you explain what the Internet of Things is to you?
Yeah, so interesting that we've had sensors for decades, and what's changing is when we start to send that sensor data up to the cloud and then make intelligent decisions based on the sensor data, send information back down to you, make your life more efficient. So the Internet of Things is truly about infusing cognitive capabilities into your world. Whether it's smart toast, that's interesting, but what really is important is our ability to make our lives, whether it's healthcare or connected cars or connected homes or connected buildings or smarter factories or smarter infrastructure or smarter cities in Kartik's case. I mean, all of those capabilities are going to be infused with augmented reality and artificial intelligence. And so the Internet of Things is that first step towards really becoming a connected world.
That's great. And Kartik, how about you?
So my definition of Internet of Things is super simple than that. Again, big fan. Drinking the Kool-Aid that I think it's going to be tremendously useful across all 8 spectrums. But at the same time, we look at it very passionately and in a more non-opportunistic way, that how can we deploy this to make people's lives better? How, if you live in our city, how can you get some more time back in your life that we don't have today? How do we take these sensors and data and have a meaningful analysis around it, that from the time you wake up to the time you go to sleep, including when you're sleeping, you're getting real live data that helps you lead a better, healthier, fulfilling life. So that's our goal and take on the IoT world.
That's awesome. I know this morning when I woke up, I asked the Amazon Echo Alexa if she can tell me what the weather was, and then also to play some tunes while I was getting ready for work. So it's pretty awesome. I mean, the connected city itself, between smart light bulbs, the smart street lights, I can really see that expanding out to cities that never had it before. So well, thank you both for answering that question. And so the next thing I wanted to talk about, so both of you guys, you're applying Internet of Things. Kartik, you're applying it towards the city. And John, you're using the Watson supercomputer. And Frank, you're also working on some of the Internet of Things objects, like the smart toaster. And I know you guys had a group of students who worked on a pizza button, which was similar to the Amazon Dash button, where you can order Tide on the go if you ever need it. So for John, what is your role in the Internet of Things, especially when you're working with IBM right now?
So as I mentioned, my role is to travel to hackathons, to inspire developers, to really just describe the art of the possible. They come with really cool ideas, and I help them infuse that idea with more cognitive capabilities. How do I take this sensor, whatever that sensor is, send the data up to the Watson IoT platform, and then use some cognitive capabilities? Maybe it's speech to text, or our analytics around the data, or being able to take that information, correlate it with the weather company statistics, and then send that data back down. So my role is really about teaching developers about the art of the possible. What can you do when you have all this sensor data, and how can you apply cognitive capabilities to it?
Awesome. And especially for us at Florida Poly, we have built the university. We opened up 3 years ago. And so we have built it from the ground up. So Kartik, you have the opportunity now working with Metro to build the first smart city in the country. And so what is your role when it comes to building the whole infrastructure? I know you guys have to use some sort of supercomputer for your big data for the cloud. And so I don't know if you're using the IBM, but just explain a little bit what you're doing there and how you're building the city.
So it started with a very simple thing first, which involved educating everybody that why having a smart city, and not only a smart city, one that has gigabit connectivity, which is 1,000 times faster than our nationwide average. Why that was a good idea to do that, and then taking it to the next step and say, okay, meeting individually with like the library system and say, okay, how can we deploy this that people go to the library for innovation and creating something as opposed to just going there to like browse Facebook? Or how do we change the schools and integrate personalized learning in it, that you don't have to wait for a parent-teacher conference to know how your kid is doing? Or how do you then integrate into and create an entire city based on health and wellness that the minute you get maybe in your car or a connected device, and it could be something like IBM Watson that analyzes it and says, hey, you know what, you have blood pressure, you need to go see the doctor today. So we're looking at those specific use cases and have come up with a 10-year roadmap for deployment, because we don't want people who are not totally in technology to be afraid of technology and get scared away that Big Brother is watching us. We want to introduce it in a smart and sensible way so people don't feel sensor overload. and we want to do it in the right and meaningful way. So we're just essentially starting with some of the components, Richard, you said, as having smart lighting. No sense in having the street lights run at 2 a.m. in the morning when there's not a soul in sight around for an entire mile, or a sprinkler running when there's a hurricane outside and it's raining and you still have irrigation running. So we're trying to solve the simple problems and then lead to larger things like how that data connects to your connected car, or going back to the wearable that you have, how that would talk to your doctor.
That is really exciting and also extremely scary, because where we're going right now is awesome. But so Frank, I would like to ask you the question, in terms of you are a Florida Poly student studying mechanical engineering, and I know you've worked on the smart toaster and you have some other projects. But is there any particular area of interest in Internet of Things that you have, and that really excites you the most?
Yeah, of course. For right now, because the infrastructure is still being built, I'm pretty interested in that. However, eventually, I believe that what I want to work on once that infrastructure is there and is all solid is the machine learning backend. So with the Internet of Things, that'll enable almost everything to act as a sensor. And what that means for I guess data analytics is that you'll be able to find new trends that we can't really understand right now because we don't have all the information that's possible. So if you have a wearable that has your heart rate at all times, we might be able to find correlations like, oh, if your heart rate is faster when you do these types of activities, you might be more susceptible to this. And I think it'll just drastically improve preemptive medicine. And I think that's pretty exciting.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's awesome. And so my next question is really more for John and Kartik. And I know, John, we have talked about it. I'm excited to hear what's going on with this particular app. Last we've talked, IBM was working on an app that would ghost hunt in the Queen Mary. So for both of you guys, I'll start with John. Can you share some information on your recent projects that relate to the Internet of Things?
Yeah, sure. So we had a wonderful conference. It was called the IBM Continuous Engineering Conference. It was hosted on the Queen Mary, which is a passenger ship built in the 1930s, and it's moored out in Long Beach, California. It's now a hotel and a conference facility. And we had a chance to do an IoT workshop on the Queen Mary. Typically I would bring a set of prototyping boards and some sensors and teach developers how to blink some lights and send some data up to the cloud. But we decided we wanted to take advantage of the unique setting that was the Queen Mary. And if you didn't know, the Queen Mary is haunted by some spirits because of its long history as part of the wartime effort. A whole bunch of different things happened on the Queen Mary. So there are some spirits on the Queen Mary, and it's a haunted place in America. So we decided to instrument the ship with a set of paranormal set of sensors. Now, I don't know what a paranormal sensor is, and so we have a consultant on the Queen Mary who hunts for ghosts. And so we instrumented the deep corners of the ship with a set of infrared cameras and high quality audio. We put sensor readings in all different locations, and we started to correlate these infrared cameras, the audio capabilities, and the temperature and pressure and humidity, looking for correlations between them. We trained Watson on what's a normal picture, and we were expecting to find some abnormal behavior along the way. And we had a great time streaming these dark corners of the ship. The students learned a lot about the sensors. We taught them about speech to text and image recognition and predictive analytics and finding anomalous behaviors from readings. And then we also got to take advantage of this. I had the biggest sensor in the world at that point because the Queen Mary was all instrumented up. It was really fun.
Awesome. Well, thank you.
John, I have to absolutely ask you this. I'm so curious. So how many ghosts did you all find?
Yeah, so we took 100,000 images from the streaming cameras, and we sent them to Watson for analysis. and we didn't find anything.
Aw.
So, now I do hear that you have to talk nicely to the ghost. So as part of our lab, you recorded a message and you transmitted the message down to the cargo hold and the engine room, and then it played back both in that participant's voice, and also Watson talked to the ghost. And if you talk nicely, the spirits are supposed to be able to talk back to you. So maybe we use sentiment analysis on the speech as well, and we didn't hear or see any ghosts, unfortunately.
Maybe because they're not connected with sensors, so they feel a little bit left behind in terms of IoT.
Yeah, so there was one theory that spirits like the presence of people, and talking to just the camera and the speakerphone wasn't really sufficient. So we'll have to revisit the Queen Mary someday, but it was a great sensor project for certain.
Awesome. And then Kartik, I know you're building a city, but what are some interesting uses of the Internet of Things that you're working right now on with the city?
So I mean, the simplest one is, as I mentioned earlier, we're deploying smart lighting, and then also looking at irrigation, water conservation, using that. But those are kind of the simple short-term cases. But what's really exciting that drives me, that we're working on, essentially is how do you able to make your house communicate essentially to the rest of the community, and also eventually to your car, and to how all this data can come together in a meaningful way that probably, I would say, 5 years from now, or maybe 10 years from now, when we get to self-driving cars and we have more artificial intelligence with better analytics and answers in our life, from the minute you wake up, the car takes you, after you're ready, based on your schedule, it takes you to your appointment. It's time for you to grab a healthy salad, and it'll take you to a salad place as opposed to taking you to a burger place. And then, if you need to go to the gym, it takes you to the gym, and then back home when you're done with all of that. But one of the missing pieces that we see is, obviously all the technology companies are focused on the hardware and connecting different elements. But other than a little bit of home automation, the place where we spend most of our time, I think, is kind of being left behind by all the technology communities. Like, we don't see, and we've been working really hard to see if can someone work on an entire smart community, right? So we can make our building smarter, we can make our cars smarter, we can make our home smarter, but there's not a really good platform that enables all of these to talk to each other in the same common language. And I hope as a society, we get there sooner than later, because I think that's where the most positive effects are. So that's a big complex problem we're trying to solve at our end, Richard.
That's absolutely true. So you think about the aggregation of a smart home and a smart car and a smarter person, but as you get to smarter communities, you can do some interesting things. Maybe it's water restrictions during the summer months, or depending on where you are, there's a drought. We all worry about sprinkler restrictions and when you can water and when you can't water. Now, I wouldn't say that I'm perfect either. My meters, doesn't always work right. But if you had a smarter, instead of the city publishing the water restrictions, why doesn't the water restriction notification and alert go straight to my sprinkler system and plan for it, right?
Absolutely.
Schedule the water sprinkler system. I've got one. It's connected. Someone should be able to control it. And yes, I want to be able to control it, but maybe I want the city to control it too. So that aggregation of the data becomes interesting. There was
Absolutely.
a really cool hackathon project where they took a water flow meter and they put the flow meter right next to your water main, and it's a sensor. So they were streaming water usage data off of your house, which most people don't know how much water they consume. And so I thought just being able to plot it and see how much your irrigation or filling up your pool is insightful and maybe changes behavior.
Definitely. And so I know, going back to the connected city, back in 2007 in Minnesota, we had the unfortunate bridge collapse. And so the exciting thing now with the Internet of Things is developing the sensors that are inside the concrete that will communicate to the future of smart cars and tell the cars if there's ice on the bridge, slow down, or to actually not even drive on the bridge because of stress issues. And so that's definitely where we're going down the future. We actually have a question I wanted to shoot over to you guys from ADR Tech Reviews. So their question was, as our society becomes more and more dependent on technology, how should developers deal with the cyber terrorism issues that can appear due to the spread of connected devices?
So I would be happy to talk a little bit IoT security. So number one, change the password. The default password on your IoT device is a welcome sign for the hackers. So that's the first thing. Change your password. And then number two, you really want to make sure that you've got layers of defenses. So it's not just a sensor hanging on the internet. It's having that sensor talk to a gateway and then have the gateway maybe more hardened talk to the internet. So you can have all of these sensors in your home, but hang it behind a stronger defense.
Absolutely. I don't know if you guys seen recently, some developers took a drone, flew it up to, I think it was a couple of stories up on a building, and hacked the apartment light bulbs. They were smart bulbs, and they were flickering the lights. So that was one of those big security flaws. And we actually had another question that was geared towards the smart light bulbs. But I know, Frank, you had wanted to chime in on here. So.
Oh, it looks like mine's been hacked too.
Yeah, so as far
I think the Queen Mary ghost controlling it, John. They're just getting back at you.
So yeah, as far as security goes with IoT, I wouldn't suspect it would be a very major problem. That would mainly go on, that responsibility mainly falls to the hands of developers or people creating the systems. But what Kartik was saying about that eventual, like that ultimate universal language that all these buildings will be able to speak in, a part of that should be an architecture of different levels of security. And yeah, I don't think it would be a very big problem, so to speak, for hackers, because it's not like they can physically go in and change the architecture of how everything works. So I wouldn't consider it a major issue as of now.
And then piggybacking on that, Kartik, and since you guys are building the city, what kind of infrastructure do you have in place to prevent, because everything is through smart and the Internet of Things, what are you guys using to prevent this stuff from happening?
So we've taken a little bit of a different approach. We think people need to make their own choices on, because we don't want to be able to control their digital lives that people think Big Brother or Big Metro, in our case, is watching them. So our take on that is very simple. We're laying the foundation and getting people started with the right. Think about right when the iPhone came out, they created a solid foundation for the App Store and people to build different apps on it. And that's the way we're doing. We're laying the right foundation and the platform for a smart city and giving people the choice on how much do they want to be part of it? Do they not want to be part of it? The things that we're deploying community-wide, and I kind of agree with what John said earlier, and even Frank. I mean, some things are just as simple as education. I mean, how many people think that having the password as password 123 is a great idea? And then those same people complain that they got hacked. So I think there's responsibility extends on both sides. So from our standpoint, as we do smart homes, we try to educate people that they need to secure their own gateways and their own routers. And we're essentially giving them a door to a smart world outside, but it's their responsibility to secure that smart door.
Awesome. And so just a little information on the Internet of Things, what's going to happen down the road. I was looking at some articles, and the Business Insider projects that there will be $6 trillion spent on Internet of Things over the next 5 years. Right now, USA Today shared that there's 20 billion Internet of Things devices that will be launched by 2020. So we had a question from Laura. She was asking how affordable is the connected devices for the general population. I just made a list of different devices I wanted to share. But I want to add on those. But for instance, you have small devices, large devices, expensive and inexpensive devices. Amazon Echo is $180. You even have the smart light bulbs that can run between $50, $60 for a pack of 2. This is kind of crazy, but there's smart batteries now, and they will alert you if your smoke detectors are running low. So these all range. There's also the refrigerators where you go to the shopping center, find out what's inside your refrigerator by just looking at the Wi-Fi in the camera connection. So basically, it really can range. And as I foresee down the road, stuff will get cheaper and cheaper as we create more of it. But Kartik and John, what do you guys think in terms of how affordable will it be for the general population?
I mean, what we're seeing right now, if I can answer that part. As you mentioned, Richard, I mean, getting a Amazon Alexa or even a Google Home, right, for $99, I think that's the right foundation. And as technology is evolving, I think a lot of problems get solved. And when there's more mainstream adoption, the costs are going to come down. I mean, even right now, you could get a full setup, be it a smart home, connected home, whatever you call it, for less than $500, which just 3 years back would have cost you $5,000.
Wow.
We talk to our builders all the time who are disappointed that they can no longer charge $5,000 because it costs only $500. So I think as more people adopt it, and the only way we'll see more adoption is if it simplifies a person's life and takes them away from sensor overload. Because while it's really cool to hear about your refrigerator spying on your eggs and seeing when they run out, and or talking about milk, do we really need that in the short term? I think that's a question to ask. Or what I think a better deployment would be to focus more on healthcare and education and cybersecurity and create a better life, and then these other things will keep coming up. When a sensor just costs $1, then you can deploy as many as you want.
Right, or less than $1 for sure. What really has enabled the Internet of Things over the last several years is that rapid decrease in cost of sensors, the availability of bandwidth, and the introduction of cloud computing. Those 3 ingredients has allowed for the price to come down to, so that it's not just one device in your home anymore. You've got many dozens, many hundreds of smart devices in your home. And honestly, they should be hidden. Over time, the expectation is that your water meter should have a flow controller on it, and it should be sending sensor data. And same thing with your electric. So I think there's all the utilities need to think hard about how they're providing services to their to their customers. I think any type of company now needs to think about the device and the service that they provide and how you can add cognitive capabilities to it using those sensors. When, and Amazon, to their credit, has done a nice job. Here's a dash, right? You press a button and it orders one thing. Now, that's not particularly efficient, but it solved a problem about ordering more detergent. And so you're going to see lots of those types of devices become almost invisible in our lives. I think your point about healthcare is really important. There's so much that we can do to improve our lives around healthcare. I've got elderly parents now, and I want to see them be able to live self-sufficiently, and sensors are going to help them do that, right? It helps me be assured that they're safe, that I can check in on them and not have to call them and ask them always, how you doing? It'd be great if I could just check the sensors, check the app. I think there's a lot of ways that we can help improve our lives by the low-cost sensors.
Absolutely. And so I know we had talked a little bit earlier, Frank, and you had an interest in hearing from John and Kartik about this one. And you guys have touched on it a little bit. But so what are some trends that you see right now in the Internet of Things technology that you'll probably see either in 6, 12, 18 months, and stuff that you won't see anymore in 6, 12, and 18 months?
I'll let John go first, and then
Sure. So what's interesting right now is you see lots of different IoT platforms, and IDC came out with their predictions just the other day, and I think they're absolutely spot on. One of their predictions is that there's going to be a consolidation of IoT platforms. We don't need hundreds of them. They're going to be consolidated down to the top 5. And so one thing that we won't see in the future is IoT platforms sending data here and sending data there and sending, here's a special device and I'm going to send this device data to only that cloud. For us to get better correlations, you're going to want your data to be aggregated in bigger places. So the larger providers are going to eventually consolidate around. So that's number one. Other predictions, we talk about smart light bulbs, and sure, it's fun to get those and play with them. But I think, and this is something that, as we think about smart homes and connected cars, you probably don't remember the day when you didn't have a remote clicker to unlock your car. Well, 20 years ago, we actually had a key, right? You had to actually insert the key into the car door. We seem to forget how quickly technology has evolved. And so humans need to adapt, right? We need to, the ability for technology to race ahead. We have to think about the human element of it too, and our ability to adapt to all of this change. So change, just because it's change, is, I'm not always convinced. Just because we can doesn't mean we should. I would like us to, first find the right technologies and apply them in the right ways, and let the explosion of ideas occur, but then over time filter it down to what's meaningful and how can it help us build a better life.
Absolutely. And then Kartik, if you had anything you wanted to add on that one.
I'm a personal big believer that technology in the hands of many is way better than in the hands of few. And that's one of our larger goals too. And that's what it applies to as to what we see in the next 2-3 years, is that I think it's right now we're seeing the early adopters using that. There's a lot of platforms over there, as John, Frank, everybody talked about. And I think we're going to see where some of these are just going to die because they don't make sense anymore, because it's just complicating things and life in general, as opposed to simplifying for us. And I think once there's more mainstream adoption, I think we're going to see a lot more people involved. And I think that will essentially be more like a hockey stick curve, where literally like overnight or in a few months after that happens, I think there's going to be so much adoption that it's really going to help our quality of life. And also the other way I look at it is that the answer is different depending on who we ask, right? And what I mean by that is the implication of technology to my daughter, who's only 5 years old, is very different than to me or to someone who's 60 years old. And so for my daughter, it's a given. If she needs a question answered, she says, "Hey Siri, play Let It Go." And here I saw my phone just go off listening to the Hey Siri command. So she's not waiting to figure out how to play Let It Go from Frozen. And I'm fortunate enough to have a semi-autonomous car. So, and as I said, she's only 5, but she doesn't ask that she saw the car driving itself. Her reaction was, she didn't say it was cool. She said, "Thank you, Tesla car, for bringing my daddy home safely every day when he's tired from work." And when she gets up in the morning, she doesn't say, "Oh my God, do I need to be afraid? Do I need to be scared of the car?" Her question is, "Daddy, why do you come drop me to school? I mean, can't the Tesla car take me to school?" So I think the answer is going to people are going to have a different level of comfort. And I think the millennials, and even I don't think that generation younger than that has a name yet, but I think they are really going to push forward through that because they're super comfortable in the social world, sharing more and more information. If that gives them more time back in life, that's what they want, right? Like the car driving yourself, or having Siri or Amazon or Watson do the menial things for you. I think that frees up time that you can spend with your family, with your friends, or be out doing things. And I think that's going to be the really critical point. When we get there, I think we're going to see tremendous amount of mass adoption that's going to move society forward in a very, very meaningful way, as opposed to just, as I said, refrigerator spying on your eggs and milk. I mean, that's really not going to do anything for us as a society.
Yeah, I know. There's also the home automation on the TV now that can control your washing machine, your bedroom, lights, your heater. So yeah, I don't really see that staying for long. But Frank, you said you wanted to join in on that one. So
yeah. So back to the question in the short term, what do we plan on seeing coming out of IoT, or what do we see people creating right now? And I personally believe that what we're going to start seeing now is, like John said, a consolidation of platforms. And that's mainly because right now the infrastructure isn't really there. And I don't think it will be the biggest focus right now to come up with new ideas for like applications, because there's no lack of imagination around. There's no lack of like developers either. The problem right now is the lack of a universal platform, something that everyone can commonly communicate with for people to build off of. So I think within the next like 12 or 18 months, we're going to start seeing a lot more development there, a lot more, more documentation, just more technical insight into how this is going to work on a larger scale.
I think open standards will play an important role in helping with that. So whether it's the protocols that send the data up to the cloud, MQTT, or how you build applications with Cloud Foundry, how you build your platform as a service, all of those, whether it's container technology to run those apps in the cloud, those open standards will eventually help us simplify some of the programming models. Node-RED, for example, is an open source project that IBM created and now is an open source foundation. Allows a developer to very quickly wire together a flow. You connect your data, you do some cognitive capabilities with it, do some analytics, and then take the next step, send a response back down to that device. So open standards or open source tools like Node-RED, it's IBM's visual programming language, is a great way to build apps, make it simpler for developers to create innovation.
awesome. Frank, actually, we have a question that's coming in. So what are the current trends that you're seeing at Florida Poly with the younger generation for Internet of Things? What's exciting? What do you guys like? What don't you like with all these devices?
Well, right now, I think exposure to Internet of Things is a little limited, but the types of trends that are starting to catch on now are somewhat more like if you look at day-to-day life, there's a lot of mundane tasks and a lot of simple questions that can be answered or simple decisions that you have to make. It's the automation of those. So being able to say like, oh, okay, so if I can put my whole calendar into this app, and it can help me plan out my day best. It's a lot of I guess mundane decision making that the Internet of Things is eventually going to integrate into technology, and it'll help alleviate those problems, I suppose.
Okay. We have a question that just came in. This one's actually for Kartik and his smart city. So Kartik, would you consider creating an artificial intelligence to keep the whole system secure? And then they mentioned under the watch of a security team, of course.
Yeah, so absolutely. I mean, so I'm a big fan of that. And obviously, I think the open AI platform that's being created by the likes of Elon Musk and Microsoft, it essentially serves that purpose, right? So the answer is twofold. Would we create one? No, we just don't have the tens of billions of dollars it would take to create something like Jarvis that's there for you every minute when you need it. But at the same time, there's super smart people that have essentially come together to create the open AI platform that they want the world to implement. And it takes away the issue we're seeing right now with some of the IoT fragmentation where things can't talk to each other. So sometimes, technology just comes along at the right time. And we think this is one of those right times where in a year or so, we'll be able to tap into the open AI and everything that's being created around that and use that to really enrich people's lives. That maybe, it would be super cool if 5 years from now we had a real Jarvis. Everyone had their own Jarvis kind of helping, as opposed to just, an Amazon device playing a song or telling when the next meeting is. We would need someone to act on it. So absolutely, super important. And I think that's the next step in the next 5 to 10 years.
I would absolutely love to have a Jarvis. So another question that came in, but first I want to introduce this topic to you guys. Recently in California, in San Francisco, we had some ransom on the Muni system. And so they hacked into the trains and they were demanding certain criteria. So the question is cyber terrorism becomes a major threat, how will developers deal with black hats hijacking vital systems or even systems, just in general? Is there a way to protect this stuff?
Yeah, of course. So right now you might be seeing some examples of that just because, again, the infrastructure isn't really there. But eventually there will be different protocols that people will be able to make. Or, for example, something that I project we'll see somewhere along the lines is the increased use of machine learning. So let's say you have a system that runs like public transit. You'll be able to just keep pumping in data into like machine learning algorithm, and it'll be able to tell you, okay, these are typical patterns that you would see, or this is typically what normal operation looks like. And you can use machine learning and machine intelligence as a level of security to an effect. So you'll be able to teach machines to recognize when something is off or when someone's trying to hack into something. And there's a lot more advances that we can make in cybersecurity. A lot of things that aren't there right now aren't really fully developed, but there are more advances that are coming, and I think it'll be increasingly or exponentially more difficult in the future once we do start putting in systems like this for black hat hijacking. So,
right. I think there's an important point there. Anytime you get to large distributed systems, you're going to have outliers, and you can't let the outlier affect the algorithm. You need to have, using machine learning and predictive analytics, be able to discard those outliers. Maybe the sensor is broken, because in any large distributed system, and when you have thousands of sensors, in a normal day, the mean time of failure says that 1 or 2 of them might be sending anomalous readings. Now, maybe it's a hacked sensor, maybe it's a sensor that's just broken, maybe it's a sensor that is mistimed, but your algorithms need to account for those erroneous readings. And so the programming model in the future is going to use that deep learning, those algorithms and the analytics that can discard the hacked data and not let it bring down the entire system.
I think we're always going to have bad actors, right? They'll never go away. And I think the simplest thing, obviously, is being vigilant. And I agree, we'll have deep learning, we'll have machine learning, but some hacker will come up with a much smarter system to bypass it. So I think as a society, we have a decision to make. Do we be scared and afraid of these and not let technology evolve where it can help us in a meaningful way 99.999% of time and make things much more safer, secure for everybody, or just worry about these bad actors and not do anything? And I think the cost of the inaction is much, much higher than the cost of a possible security breach. Because who says that couldn't happen today? Without any of this in place, if someone wanted to do, people can physically just break a door and get into your facility right now. So it just depends on how things evolve, and we should not be afraid of these bad actors. It's just staying one step ahead of them.
Definitely. And another question that came in was asking, why don't we build on the technology that we're using with Cortana and Alexa, and then really create more of a more intelligence, and maybe create like robots or stuff like that, similar to like iRobot, where we have these robots controlling the city with security. And so the biggest fear I would have would be these robots then turning against us with someone that's hacking the system.
I don't see that in the foreseeable future. Certainly, where IBM's view is, it's not artificial intelligence becoming cognizant. It's augmented intelligence helping those employees or those people do their job better. It's not about trying to create that iRobot. It's really about helping building the computers today, because that's still science fiction. We shouldn't worry about science fiction. We should really focus on what can we do today to augment the making better decisions through deeper analytics. That's where we're going to get value.
And even on the simplest terms, I know you guys with the Watson is now recognizing what is a Pepsi can and a Coke can, right?
We did, right? So part of Watson visual recognition, you can train the service around objects in the physical world. So there was a hack project at UC Davis back in the second quarter. They took some pictures of Coke cans and some pictures of Pepsi cans, and they trained the visual recognition tool to distinguish between the two. And Coke cans are red and Pepsi cans are blue, and they've got a dot, and Coke cans have a white swoosh on it. And so they were able to build an app that was able to distinguish between a Coke can and a Pepsi can. It was clever use of how machine learning vision works. Now you can go apply that in the real world to all sorts of other problems, which is going to be great fun to watch.
Awesome. And then for you, all of you guys, actually, I don't know if you've seen this, but Panasonic, they shared a video at their latest Internet of Things conference, and they had the completely transparent, invisible TV. On top of that, they have a kitchen table that will cook your food right where you're sitting. So, Kartik, are you guys planning, I don't know if you can share some of those secrets, but planning on maybe installing some invisible TVs in the smart city?
So I think we have a lot of that. So we're looking at it from a two-step approach. One is kind of having the super cool stuff in what we'll call as kind of our innovation or technology center that sits on the Crystal Lagoon, where people can walk in and imagine the future and see all the things that are coming down the line. But again, also, I mean, it's cool to have an invisible TV, but 10,000 people who are going to be moving in there are not going to be able to afford the invisible TV. But at the same time, we want to inspire them that the technology exists, and then over time, it's going to be available. So we want to be, the way we look at our role in all of this, Richard, is to be the catalyst to accelerate adoption of IoT and technology, that people can actually touch it, feel it, ask the questions, and then make the decision themselves on what they feel comfortable with. And as I said, it's a network effect, right? When you see your neighbors using it, and your school teacher and other friends, I think people will get more comfortable that, okay, this system's not looking at interfering in my life or taking all my data and selling it to Google. It's really there to help me save time, lets me know, okay, the weather is bad, I need to leave 15 minutes early to go to work, as opposed to right now, you sit in the car, you turn on the GPS, and you realize, oh shit, you are going to be 15 minutes late. So it's again, there's a lot of data and information out there, but it's more of a one-way street the way we see it, right? The end user is not able to use that data in any meaningful way. I'm sure Watson is, but Watson is not available to the common man like you, me, and Frank. But when
you can go create that account.
Sorry, what's that?
No, so Watson is available for free. So if you go to bluemix.net, and you can create a free trial account, and you can run for 30 days, create applications, and it's really a great way to get stared.
Right, right.
So
For developers, yes, but for the non-techie people like me who don't know how to code or develop for Watson, we'll have to wait out there as what's the right time to be able to adopt it. So I think right now we can just look at it and say, okay, these are really cool applications. Let's plan for them in a meaningful way, and again, hopefully help society move forward.
Definitely. And John, we have a question in regards to the Watson. Will it be possible to have the Watson ever create its own code and then train itself?
So right now, there is a training step to many of these cognitive capabilities. You can build great algorithms, but ultimately, we want to work with industry, work with enterprises, work with developer communities, and let them guide the technology and teach the technology. Ultimately, it's your idea. And so one thing that we made a decision to do is IBM doesn't share that information with others. So you train it, it's your training. It's a different approach that we took from some of the other platform providers. And so I don't see in the near term suddenly the services becoming self-aware. That's certainly not what's happening.
Okay, so we have a question that's really geared towards students listening right now, and even people that are just wanting to get involved into the Internet of Things field. So for John and Kartik, what are some things that young professionals can do right now to break into the industry, and even maybe in college, if it's internships, and how should they prepare for a field like this?
Well, my take on it is very simple. As I said, be very curious. There's a lot to learn out there, and just follow your passion. Again, and I'm a living example of that. I'm not from a techie background, but it comes out of a deep curiosity to make our communities and cities better, and the passion behind it. That's and I think that can work for anyone and everyone.
So I would add that developers in the future are going to be programming to the cloud. And so any university students and professionals, as you know, if you're in industry already, learn how to use the cloud APIs, learn how to build through services and API keys, because the capabilities available to you, you take your device that used to just sit on your desk, is now collaborating across a huge cloud of services. And so be comfortable in the future in experimenting with all of the different APIs. So as a student, create yourself a Bluemix account, free, and start to experiment with some of the cognitive capabilities, and just be inspired by what you can build in the future.
Absolutely. And so, Frank, what exactly are you doing right now at Florida Poly to help get you to that next step? And really, how is Florida Poly helping you in terms of maybe mechanical engineering, but also just to inspire you to work on Internet of Things projects?
As far as like the mechanical engineering part goes, that won't really play a role in IoT until there is that infrastructure and we start making actual devices, and then that would help with like the invisible TV, things like that. However, my suggestion for people, or for students specifically who want to get involved in technology and want to get involved in the Internet of Things, is if they are technical and if they do enjoy code, I would suggest keeping up with the news, looking and seeing what IBM has been pushing out recently or what Google's been doing, and seeing how that's developing, and also learning about like the architecture, how things will communicate, and yeah, starting free trials, getting familiar with cloud APIs, and actually building things in your free time, or getting together with friends and building things at hackathons or anything like that. For people who aren't technical, like I only started coding probably about a year ago, and now I've gotten really into it, probably more than most people would. However, for someone who's non-technical, I would say at least just keep up with the news and see what they see developing, and try and try and take things out of the news. So when you see a couple different articles all come out in succession, try and pick up on trends. Like, oh, so something that's coming out that's really popular is like Alexa, or voice services that can understand what you're saying and help you do things. And at least try and get an idea as to where we're going that way. And if you're interested in that, then I absolutely encourage people to pursue that interest and try and get more into the IoT as much as you can.
Yeah. Frank had a very good point about just trying experimenting. So IBM publishes on developer.ibm.com/recipes a set of instructions on how to build typically small 15, 20 minutes, 30-minute modules on how to build something. And so it's got instructions step by step. Several hundred of them are now available. So if you want to learn how to program to a Raspberry Pi or an Edison, Intel Edison, or a TI sensor tag, you can go and find a recipe and create something by following some steps. And I think that first helps you learn about the device, learn about the capabilities of the platforms, and those recipes then give you ideas on what you might do with it. So take that recipe and then create your own innovations on top of it.
Awesome. Well, on behalf of Florida Polytechnic University, myself, and everyone else listening, we want to thank all three of you today for taking the time out to talk to us about the Internet of Things and how cool it can be and how cool it is. So that's going to wrap up our discussion tonight. Thank you all again for joining us, and special thanks to our panelists here for taking the time again. So good night, everybody. Thank you.
You're
Thanks
welcome.
to everyone listening.